Grief arrives in the bunker living room like a guest who doesn't know where to sit, and the first thing it does is bump into dinner. A long day has sandpapered tempers. Meatloaf and roughage turn into a comic debate about what should go in and what should go out, and Archie vents about a coworker's truancy, as if the world's balance depends on one man's time card. Then the phone call cuts the rhythm in half. Stretch Cunningham is gone. A heart attack, sudden, unnegotiated, and utterly indifferent to all the little quarrels that filled the afternoon. Archie's first impulse is stubborn refusal. Funerals make him itchy, and grief makes him defensive. But memory is persuasive. Edith is gentle in that firm way only she knows, and a brother-in-law appears asking for a favor no one thinks they can do until they do it. Say something honest for a friend. The task is complicated by a truth Archie never knew. Stretch was Jewish, so all the lazy jokes and locker room assumptions collapse under the weight of a casket and a yarmulke. What results is an awkward, human eulogy that is wrong in its phrasing but right in its heart. A blue-collar poem about laughter as credit extended and debts paid, about a man who added years to another man's life by way of jokes on lunch breaks. The humor bristles, the stereotypes clang, yet the sincerity breaks through like sunlight in a fidgety chapel. Grief is like that in this family, messy in the mouth, decent in the bones, and oddly comforting when it finally lands. The apartment moves on, because that is what apartments and families do. A second domestic plotline begins with a sweater, Toll House cookies, and a book that makes Gloria cringe. A breezy manual promising to turn a wife into her husband's mistress. Edith didn't buy it to become someone else. She picked it up to understand whether love after decades can adjust its glasses and smile at the same person in a new way. The comedy is innocent and awkward, the floor littered with crumbs, the hem of modesty tugged one way and then the other. Yet it points to a very adult truth. People in long marriages don't stop wanting to feel wanted. Edith tries to speak softly about the privacies, her word for the business of being a couple with bills and obligations and desire that has had to learn to whisper so it can last. Archie, allergic to conversations that might rearrange his self-image, declares a moratorium on sex talk, which of course forces the talk out of hiding. What follows is a gentle confession from Edith about fear. Fear of losing him to a younger woman, fear of the mirror's new honesty, and a surprisingly tender reassurance from Archie that sounds, in his fractured vocabulary, like a sonnet. He insists he still sees her through eyes designed by nature to soften the edges of time. He swears she wrote the book on making him happy. The laughs keep the moment safe, but the ache is there. A couple negotiating aging, insecurity, and loyalty without breaking the furniture. On another day, the city becomes a moving theater when the family finds themselves on a subway car that feels like a traveling sociology class. The car is full of types: the loud drunk, the pickpocket disguised as a harmless passenger, the windy ideologue delivering revolution between stops, a lawyer hawking lawsuits like hot dogs, and even a doctor unwilling to help for fear of premiums. Archie, as usual, sees danger in everyone who looks at him wrong. Gloria argues for basic decency. Mike, the idealist, rolls his eyes at Archie's violent metaphors while swearing allegiance to nonviolence. Then a domestic fight near them turns ugly. A boozy husband grabs his wife, and the train becomes a courtroom whose judge is adrenaline. Mike, pushed past his creed, throws a single punch that drops the man to the floor. For a minute, the car turns into a frantic emergency ward. Everyone suddenly knows first aid. No one wants responsibility, and the doctor with the briefcase wants plausible deniability more than anything else. The man comes to, the conflict shifts into legal threats, and the moment's complicated lesson surfaces. Sometimes your body moves to defend someone before your philosophy can vote. Mike is rattled less by what happened than by how it felt. He didn't hate it, and now he's stuck holding a mirror up to himself. Archie calls it humanity. Gloria calls it context. The train lurches forward and morality, like the car, rattles, but stays on the track. The episode leaves a quiet aftertaste. Pacifism is a compass, not armor. Love can be a reflex, and sometimes doing right is louder than you expected. Back home, fate lights a match in the upstairs bathroom and turns the bunker house into a slapstick emergency. Edith wakes to the smell of smoke and the sound of panic trying to be helpful. Alarm calls go out in the way only this family can deliver them, sideways, with wrong numbers and right intentions. Neighbors rush in, arms full of opinions and half-remembered safety tips. People suddenly care about the strangest treasures: a camel knick-knack, a pink swan, bronze baby booties, a Tupperware certificate, napkin rings with sentimental gravity. In the doorway, furniture becomes a series of moral choices. What is worth saving when you can't save it all? And comedy lights up the trio. Barney hefts Archie's beloved chair as if it's a wounded veteran. A dog chooses the worst possible time to endorse someone's leg. The garden hose receives a promotion to firefighter. And while the flames threaten, everyone organizes chaos with stubborn affection until the professionals arrive and do, in 2 efficient minutes, what panic could not. The fire is a crisis and a temptation. When the adjuster shows up, polite and practiced, Archie imagines upgrading disaster into a shopping spree. He's convinced that insurance is a game played by companies that only pretend to be your friend. He wants to inflate the damage because he believes the system is already cynical. The adjuster, part bureaucrat, part poker player, walks the house like a man counting cards. He credits the bathroom damage, frowns at the theatrically smoked curtains, and then points to a glittering, damning penny in the fuse box. In solving one problem the quick way, Archie created the next problem the hard way. The negotiation is a dance, dollar figures tossed onto the table like small grenades, 5,000, 2,000, 1,000, and the adjuster wins by hinting at the word no desperate homeowner wants to hear: arson. Archie signs, deflated, and the lesson lands not as a sermon but as a sigh. Sometimes the shortcut that gets the lights back on leaves a long shadow. Even so, the humor remains, about premiums, about the finger some companies extend instead of a hand, and the family braces for wallpaper debates that matter far less than being alive to argue. Underneath the big comic beats, the recurring themes tie themselves into a knot you can hold. Grief that makes you remember what made a life worth living. Marriage trying to stay curious about the person it already knows. Ideals that get tested on a crowded train. And the ethics of doing right in a world that often looks like it rewards wrong. The writing keeps choosing small objects to carry big ideas. A yarmulke that forces Archie to rewrite his memory of a friend. A how-to book that opens a door to a conversation Edith and Archie never learned how to have. A single punch that knocks out a paragraph of Mike's identity. A penny that turned a dark apartment bright, and a claim into a confession. A chair that feels like home because a man has sat there long enough to plant roots. A magnet that holds bills and optimism in equal measure. The jokes are sometimes crass, the language unvarnished, and yet the heart of each story drips a plain integrity that's harder to find in slogans than in kitchens. This family's world is a democracy of feelings. Arguments begin where people are tired. Reconciliations happen when people notice what they would miss if the other were gone. Archie's vocabulary is a machine full of stripped gears. He grinds when delicate speech is required, but he shows up. Edith's grammar is made of patience and Toll House cookies. She coaxes tenderness out of stubborn rooms. Gloria wants progress to be immediate and kind, as if justice kept office hours. Mike wants a moral code that will survive the subway, the bar, and the Thanksgiving table. Friends and neighbors cycle through with their own weather systems. The neighbor who times a rescue poorly but means well. The clerk who decides a coupon matters less than dignity. The stranger on a train who proves that half the car wants to help if someone will declare it helping time. Even the dog has perfect comic timing, but he also patrols thresholds like a soft-furred sentinel reminding everyone that home is guarded not just by locks but by loyalty. The funeral thread in particular shows how sitcom laughter can widen into something like communal grace. Archie's bumbling eulogy is uncomfortable on purpose. It makes the audience bump into their own reflexes. When he realizes Stretch lived an identity he never guessed at, Archie has to confront both his friend's private complexity and his own public carelessness. The words he chooses are wrong. The feeling is right. He fumbles until he finds the only truth he knows. Stretch made him laugh in hard years, which is one way of saying Stretch helped him live. He tries to apologize across the border between living and dead, And that attempt becomes the bridge the episode wants to build, between ignorance and understanding, between stereotype and face, between the easy joke and the long work of decency. It is, like the whole enterprise, clumsy and human and moving. The bedroom conversation does something equally delicate in another key. A long marriage is a ship whose sails have been patched with fights, bills, apologies, and inside jokes. It still needs wind. Edith's curiosity is not desperation, it's devotion asking for a little light. Archie's discomfort is not cruelty, it's a man trained to keep certain doors locked even when the room behind them is exactly where intimacy lives. They meet in the middle of their awkwardness and write a new paragraph in a long story. We can talk, we can laugh, and we can tell the truth without burning the house down. Their tenderness lands not in poetry, but in a mismatched analogy about eyesight and wrinkles that, despite itself, becomes perfect. It suggests a philosophy of aging together. Bodies change, but love learns which details to blur and which to underline. The subway episode sends another memo from the writers about the ethics of living with strangers. You share space, you share fate. What you're prepared to do for the person next to you defines a kind of citizenship that has nothing to do with flags and everything to do with reflex. The car is a microcosm of a country arguing with itself, cynicism announcing failure in advance, compassion arguing for effort in the middle, officials calculating risk, bystanders filming with their eyes, and one person stepping forward even though stepping forward breaks his own rules. The punch lands, the questions arrive. The episode doesn't tell you what to think. It shows you how thinking feels when your heart is outrunning your head. And the fire? It's a comic parable about shortcuts and accountability. It insists that expediency in the dark can be costly in the light. It reminds a household that stuff is not sacred but can be symbolic, that neighbors will come, that insurance adjusters speak a language designed to keep numbers obedient, and that you can lose a bathroom and still keep your ability to argue, which means you are still in business as a family. It leaves you with an image of wallpaper samples and hockey on TV, of a couple disagreeing about paisley and roses as if those patterns could undo the scorch marks upstairs, and of a sigh that sounds like, "We're alive. Let's keep going." Stitch all these threads together, and you get a portrait of ordinary people headbutting the day until it yields a little softness. Sometimes the humor is a cushion, sometimes it's a screwdriver, and sometimes it's a mirror. The show never lets its characters be perfect, it lets them be specific. It never grants easy halos, it grants small victories, a eulogy that tells the truth crookedly but lovingly, a marriage that remembers it can speak kindly about desire, a pacifist who protects someone and then interrogates himself rather than brag, a house that smolders but does not break, a neighborhood that shows up. The result is a moral weather report for American families trying to stay decent under economic squeeze, generational friction, and the thousand paper cuts of city life. It is messy, funny, affectionate, and under the jokes about coupons and cookies and plumbing, quietly brave about naming what matters. That we belong to each other and are responsible for the space we share, whether it's a pew, a kitchen, a subway car, or a living room that smells faintly of smoke and Toll House sweetness.